Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings NBA video for Wednesday, March 16th. There are three guys. I started building lineups this morning, and I looked back at them, and there were three guys that kept popping up on all the lineups that I was building. So I think these are probably three of my favorite plays on the day. So what I did is I wrote up a little slideshow for you guys to show you some of them. And then afterwards, we're going to do a new video today where we kind of talk about some of these cheap swerves that we're going to be able to use. But first, I wanted to get out the targets video for you. There are three guys who have wound up in a ton of my rosters this morning, and those three guys are Sullinger at 6K, Taj Gibson at 4,900, and Russell Westbrook at 10,500. Now, Sullinger's in a high 220 total game versus the Oklahoma City Thunder, and this is two high-paced teams going up against each other in Boston and OKC, so I'm expecting a ton of points in this game. Now, the Celtics have some injuries right now. Crowder is out. Olynyk is still doubtful. And with those two guys not playing, Sullinger has seen some big minutes lately. When he sees 30 minutes, he tends to get you at least 30 fantasy points. And he's actually been giving you some upside because he's been seeing even more than 30 minutes lately. He's double-doubled in his last two games to finish with 38 and 59 DraftKings fantasy points. And he's a cheap center with upside. And what I mean by that is, a lot of people wind up paying up in that 7 to 8K range for some of these centers. When you can find a cheap center that you like that can get you the same 30 to 40 fantasy points, you're usually able to build a really good roster around them because you have an extra $2,000 or $3,000 to spend at other positions that most people who went after the higher price centers don't have. It's why a lot of times when Alex Len was coming up in the 5 or 6K range, and when Nikola Jokic has one of his big games in the 5 or 6K range, if you can get 40 points out of a guy who's 6K or below, you're usually able to build a really nice roster around them, because now instead of having to take a $3,000 or $4,000 punt at another position to make it fit, you can go ahead and put in another one of those $6,000 guys who you have a lot more safety in. Remember, if you can find a $6,000 player at every position, you leave yourself $2,000 left over to upgrade somewhere. And if each one of those guys gets you 36 fantasy points, you wind up at 300 for the day. If you wind up getting 5 fantasy points out of each one of those guys at 6K, you're still going to wind up with a roster that's in between 250 and 300, and give yourself at least a chance on some of the lower scoring nights to still be able to hit some of your 50-50s and win a few of your cash games. So I do think it's a pretty good spot here for Sullinger. I think it's a great price point, and I also think by using a cheap center at $6,000, you give yourself money to spend up elsewhere, which allows you to build a more unique roster that has more studs on it. The next guy I want to talk about here is Taj Gibson at 4,900. He's in a high total game versus the Washington Wizards, and the Wizards are a team that plays at a high pace. So even though the Bulls have been playing a little bit paced up lately as well with all the injuries they've had, they're going up against a team that plays at an even higher pace. So I'm expecting to see a lot of points in this game. We do have Pau Gasol out, so Taj has seen an uptick in his minutes, uptick in his usage, his shots, his rebounding, everything that we like to see for fantasy stats he's been able to show us lately. He saw 34 minutes in the last game and had a double-double, put up a pretty nice score. And he should see 30-plus minutes again here with a floor of about 25, I think, is a safe bet for him. And he has reasonable upside towards 35 points again. I don't think it's asking too much to expect 35 out of Taj Gibson. But again, I think he's very safe for a minimum of 25. So worst case scenario, I don't think he kills you. And I do think he gives you a chance to get up to that upside and, give you 7x value. The last guy I want to talk about is Russell Westbrook. I think he's going to go lower owned today because the DVP matchup is not very good. But guys, this is Russell Westbrook we're talking about here. He's playing in a 220 total game versus Boston. Both Boston and OKC play at a high pace, as we talked about with Sullinger. And Russell Westbrook has been just an animal all year long, and lately he's looked even better. He's got 4 triple-doubles in his last 8 games. Everybody's drooling over using Giannis because he has 4 since the break. Well, Russell Westbrook has 4 in the last 2 weeks. So if you're looking for guys that you're going to spend up on, if you spend up 92 for Giannis yesterday, I don't think it's much of a stretch to spend up 10,500 for Westbrook, who's actually discounted a little bit. He was up close to $11,000 at one point. And the thing is, he's not just giving you triple doubles of like 12, 10, and 10. He's gone 17 points, 10 rebounds, 16 assists for 64 fantasy points. 25 points, 11 rebounds, 20 assists for 76 fantasy points. 20 points, 13 rebounds, 15 assists for 67 fantasy points. And the worst triple-double he had was still 15 points, 10 rebounds, 11 assists for 50 points. And he actually didn't even play a ton of minutes in that game. So as you can see, Westbrook is just absolutely on fire right now. He's playing about as well as he's played all season. And with all the cheap options that we're going to discuss in the other video, you know, we reached the time of year where so many injuries are happening and so many of these 3 and 4K guys are getting 25 and 30 minutes, and you're able to build rosters. I mean, I think Boogie Cousins was 65% owned yesterday at $11,000 in some of the tournaments, not even in cash games. In cash games, he was 80, 90% owned. But you were able to build rosters with guys that you liked and thought were in pretty good spots that were $3,000 and $4,000 around a guy like Boogie Cousins yesterday. And I think you're going to be able to do the same thing tonight around Russell Westbrook. I don't know exactly which 3K guys are going to be in and who's hurt and who's out and who's not going to be playing yet. But again, if you're looking for that information, you can come back over to RotoCurve tonight between 5 and 6. Join us here for the Pivot Show with Ricky Sanders, Josh Kalachi, and myself. And, you know, we'll give you the latest news right before tips. So when you're building your rosters, you can start with some of these guys and then, you know, find out which $3,000 and $4,000 guys, because of injury news, we think you have to have in your roster to round it out. It seems to be the roster construction that's winning a lot of tournaments lately. So you definitely want to make sure you have that last second information. So that sums it up for our NBA video today. Excuse me. Thank you for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.